My husband is selling his mother's house in Vermont, and he's working with his brothers to do that. So there's 3 sellers, basically. The house is in all 3 of their names. They hire a grounded agent to do this. He's been in business probably 30 years. Get it looking great, get it priced what I feel is inspirational. Photos look good, listing reads well, and the house is barely 14 years old. It's not like something from the late 1700s, like across the street, right? About a week and a half later, a buyer comes along and makes an offer. I'm an agent, I'm curious. I wanna see what the offer looks like. Forms are different in every state, and the way people kind of go and have this conversation about, I wanna buy your house, do you wanna sell it to me, happens differently in every state. The buyer had 14 days to do their inspections, a strange, undefined time frame to get all the reports from those inspections and delivered to us, and then had 5 days after the final reports were in to try to negotiate any concerns to be addressed with the seller. So she gets her inspection done, she gets all her reports back, and fortunately she got all that done and very quickly. And then here comes the 5 days where they're negotiating things. We're trying to sell this house for $320,000 to her, and she comes back and she has all this crazy stuff that she says, here's all the problems that I want solved, and I want the house now for $250 in lieu of making all these repairs. House probably has high radon, right? They dug a basement, they put a slab in with radiant heating. It's in Vermont, there's a lot of granite. She didn't give us a radon test. They take a sideways picture of a machine twice with a high reading and a low reading, and if the lower reading was upstairs. I have no idea. I never saw a test. So a radon test is a 48-hour period where you actually put a device on a tripod, usually, not sitting on top of somebody's TV or on some kind of electronic equipment that could really affect the movement of that actual radioactive particles. You run this test for 48 solid hours. You just turn it on and it knows to take a reading like that every hour on the hour, and on hour 48, 1 minute later, it clicks off. The device has to be picked up by the testing person, by the inspector, and they go back and they feed out the information from it and it reads out. You have a low hour, a high hour, somebody opened a door so it was low again, somebody moved in around the house so it was low again. It all averages out. And the 48-hour average is supposed to be at or below 4.0 before we have any real concerns. Some people are concerned about 3 and higher, some people are not concerned even if. She kept asking for this concession because she felt the radon was high, she felt the septic tank needed to be replaced. We had her get a septic inspection, and when they sent the inspection over, they had 2 tiny little thumbnails of the septic and it was a picture of the outside of the house with some guy's foot kicking dirt. It wasn't even photographs of the inside of the septic tank where they claimed a crack would be or water wasn't being contained, right? These northeastern climes, you usually have an oil furnace and you have a fuel in an oil tank, right? And it's in your cellar. Everybody has a cellar. You don't keep the stuff outside because it's freezing freaking cold and tractors might run into it, right? So it's in your cellar. And then when you expel that out, you have a pretty heavy gauge double wall flue that goes out, and you'll either have a double wall steel flue going up the side of your house, or you can build a CMU, a concrete masonry unit chimney, and it has a clay pipe in the middle of it. And you just put that clay pipe up and you put the CMUs that are built to kind of go around it, and you fill it in with mortar, and then you stack it up. It's like Lincoln logs, about 32, 33 of those things, and you've got expelling of your carbon monoxide, CO, from your gas furnace. There was some mortar missing in this thing, and she wanted us to go through an $11,600 rebuild of the whole chimney, to stack 32 blocks on top of each other with a clay flue in the middle of it. I could knock the whole thing down and build half the house all over again for that amount of money. We kept going back and forth where we're saying, hey, we'll replace the septic, we're gonna repoint your chimney, and we'll put a radon system in the basement and retest it to show you that we've taken care of the problem. And she didn't like that. She said, no, I still want all that stuff done, or I want all my money off, and now we're worried about radon in the well water. We want you to test the water for that and then do a mitigation system in that if it comes back high. And I'm thinking, we're 3 weeks into this now. You had 14 days to do all your tests. That's not our responsibility, it's your responsibility. And if you want it done at this point in time, you can pay for it. And she wanted $10,000 extra just in case something else would go wrong with the house later on. Our reply kept being very consistent. We hear you, we see what you want, don't really think that's reasonable or necessary. We'll replace the septic tank, we'll repoint the mortar on the chimney, and we'll put a radon system in the house. And she finally, at 10 o'clock last night before an 11:59 p.m. deadline, said, we agree. We're sending this back over to you. They literally copied and pasted what I typed up and sent to me. And I'm reading through it and I'm reading through it. Right there on the radon line where I said, we'll put a radon system in the basement of the house because I want to distinguish it away from her misconstruing that as the water in the well. She wrote the line, seller shall have radon testing done on the well water and install a mitigation system if necessary. And I'm like, no, for the fourth time. And so I struck that, had Carl's brothers all initial the strikeout, and they signed this, but we once again are not doing this water mitigation, okay? These people were talking down to the buyer, scaring her, alarming her at certain things. I hate it when folks do that because we don't deserve that, and I like to think that we're all smarter than that. But it's not good when people get in and they take somebody who is either vulnerable or not in a place to make the best decisions for themselves, and the people that are actually coming out to help are actually harming because they're going to kill a deal, and the seller would never agree to, tear the whole thing down and build it again for $11,600, right? I desperately wanted to have a conversation with that buyer and their agent. So as of last night, they've terminated their contract. The buyer had the right to by 11:59 p.m. that night because it was 5 days after they gave us all their reports. It's the way their contract was written. And so today the property goes back on the market at $325,000, which it was listed for. What's going to happen in the meantime is they are going to replace the septic tank, and then the last thing that they'll do is they will put a radon mitigation system. And the way they do that is they drill a couple of holes in either sides of the slab, and they have a suction, kind of like a fan in there, and it pulls the actual radon particles from underneath the slab and then sends it out. And they'll adjust that to do whatever they need to, and then they'll come back a couple of days later after the system's been running to test it again, do a 48-hour test to make sure we're below 4.0 parts. It could be several different things. It could be someone who never could have afforded anything over $300,000 in the first place. Somebody on the buyer's side probably saw an opportunity to say, let's go ahead and get it under contract for whatever they want. We're gonna claw all of this back when we go through inspections because I bet you those three guys don't know their own deceased parents' house well enough. What they don't understand is that 2 out of the 3 brothers were very integral in all the decisions that were made, and they know that house like the back of their hand.